Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us for today's presentation on V11 pre-planning. Why don't we just go ahead and get started?
Yeah.
So we did something a little different in this presentation because we like to change things up.
We got rid of the About RPI section.
And somewhere Bill Getty's head is exploding. So we've been in business for a long time. We are a professional services company that specializes in Lawson and CloudSuite. If you would like more information about RPI, please email questions at rpic.com, and Bill Getty would be happy to schedule some time to tell you all about us.
Yeah.
So with that, why don't we get to our presentation? And I think first we have to talk about what is pre-planning. So the number one question we get right now from customers about V11 is, how much is it going to cost? And the short answer is, it depends. It depends on a lot of things, including how big your Lawson footprint is today, what new functionality you're looking to deploy as part of this implementation, how much opportunity there is to do some business process redesign and take advantage of a lot of the process-centric delivered functionality that CloudSuite has, and whether your organization could benefit from some GL and or HR restructure. So pre-planning is the process of identifying what a V11 migration looks like at your organization so that you know both the answer to what the cost is and what the internal timeline and effort, but also what the benefit is and what it's going to resolve in your organization. When we talk about why pre-plan, well, you know, the migration to V11 is going to be a big project. Even if you keep everything the same, you're happy with your structures, this is not an IT infrastructure project. You will have to engage business users, and there's two primary reasons for that. One is, at the end of the day, it is a platform migration. It's going to change the way that they are interfacing with and gathering data from the system, and the UI, the user interface, is a significantly different, though better and more advanced, than what they're used to in Lawson today, and that's going to require their engagement and several rounds of testing. But the flip side of why pre-plan, and I think this is what gets underestimated, is there is a lot of functionality in V11 that can help your organization. And for the most part, we have found that a lot of process owners and business owners aren't fully aware of the amazing capabilities of V11, right? This is an opportunity to leverage all that knowledge your organization has built in Lawson, right? Because this is the next generation of Lawson. And to have them work to alleviate those pain points with all the new functionality V11 brings to the table. So, you know, I think the big reason for pre-planning is that this is an opportunity, and you want to do it right, and you want to have that roadmap for how to get there and set yourself up for the next 25 years.
Yeah, you want to scope your project appropriately. You want to make sure that you have the right goals identified, so that way when you get on the other side, everybody's got what they thought they were getting when they.
And some of those opportunities could include Streamline Reporting, you know, having an HR structure that is reflective of your actual organization. And we're going to talk about just how beneficial that is in terms of downstream cost savings and time savings for the organization. You can consolidate your AP processing. You can bring in-house your open enrollment. You can bring in some point solution, greatly reducing costs. And you can also take all those workarounds you built over the years to take a transactional system and build the processes that are necessary and just use what's delivered in the system, and gain the efficiencies of those as they go along. So in your pre-planning exercise, there's basically two major objectives. One of them is to get organizational buy-in. As we said, this is a project that is going to, by definition, disrupt business users. So in that sense, it is not like any of your previous upgrades where the main goal has been to make it totally transparent to them and not affect them. So what you want is you want them to understand, hey, I'm going to get some stuff out of this, right? To get that buy-in. And you also want the support of your executives, right? You want to make the business case for the cost savings and the competitive advantages that come. The second objective is to basically understand, as we said, what is this going to look like at your organization? And this is helpful when you go out to RPI or your other consulting partners and talk about what that roadmap looks like in terms of budgeting and effort. All right, so let's start with the first of the first.
Engage business owners. Yeah, so if you're watching this webinar right now, I mean, maybe you're in IT, maybe you manage the enterprise application portfolio, and you're thinking towards, all right, I know we need to figure out what our V11 project's going to look like. I know that we need to start getting quotes from partners. How do I get started? Well,
Quick question.
yeah.
All of you watching out there, raise your hands if you consider yourself part of IT and not part of the process side.
I see, looks like several hundred hands
Yeah.
have just gone up. So I would say one of the most important things that we can do early on here is educate your business users about what version 11 really is and what it means to them. It is amazing how often we talk to executive leadership, such as a CFO or a CHRO, and they ask about, well, does the system do this, or can the system do this, or can I get rid of this other point solution system? Maybe we just take it for granted because we've been going to Infor for years. We go to user groups. We're really up to date on all the information coming out from Infor about the product. Maybe we take it for granted, and we need to help everybody else in the organization understand what it really means, because that if your CHRO doesn't know how wonderful benefits enrollment is in version 11, chances are they probably do know Workday's benefits enrollment capabilities. Chances are. So it's really important that that you, as the champion of Infor CloudSuite in your organization, help translate all of this information coming out from Infor and the partners to a message that resonates with business users. And then next, you want to listen. You want to listen to their needs and do some discovery and figure out, what are their pain points with the current system? What's on their wish list for a next generation system? What are the features that they absolutely need? What are some of the features that would be nice to have, and what have you? You want to start documenting that out, and that is really going to help you construct your project scope. As you mentioned, Keith, there is a ton of new features, right? There is an enormous amount of screens and modules, capabilities that you get as part of V11 that just aren't in the Lawson software today. So the question is, which of those does it make sense for phase one? Which of those does it make sense to put on the roadmap for further phases?
Which are your biggest pain points, basically?
Yeah. And then finally, super important to rally the troops and get your business owners to participate in this project. It's super important that the business does not feel like this is something that's happening to them. Mm-hmm. They need to be a part of this. They need to be driving this. They need to have a seat at the table.
Yes, this should be a business led initiative to be successful. So obviously, you also need to get your executive buy-in, right? Because this is going to be a project that your organization is going to have to invest in, both financially and in terms of effort. And for that, I think that as part of your pre-planning, you want to make the business case. So all these pain points that we talked about, they have financial ramifications for your organization. So one of the things we talk about a lot is Global Ledger has a flexible GL structure. Mm-hmm. That's great. What does that mean? So first of all, it means this is the opportunity for a lot of folks that implemented 20 years ago and have decided they're not happy with the levels in their accounting units, or they're not happy with the amount of digits that they chose for their accounts, or how they set up their accounts are running out, to rethink that, no matter what. That's something you could have done in the past, but now it's a unique opportunity where there's going to be tooling to help you do that quote unquote, GL reimplementation. But additionally, this flexibility solves a couple of the limitations that Lawson has. One is, when they talk about these additional dimensions, this is basically your GL code block. So in any place that you are concatenating multiple data elements into your accounting unit or your activity or your account category, the opportunity to break that out does some really important things. One is it makes the maintenance a hell of a lot easier, right? I don't have to maintain all those different combinations. I can just maintain the relationships. But more importantly, it makes getting the data out of the system a lot easier as well. So in the case that I have a lot of data elements packed into a single piece of the GL code block, I'm going to have to take that out of the system. I'm going to have to break that out, or I'm going to have to build directly into my reports to say, take the digits 3, 4, 5. In the case that it's part of the GL code block, it becomes an indexing field that anybody can run off of with a self-service BI, right? So we're talking about a big simplification in how the entire organization can get data out of the system based on these key fields. Another really important one is the fact that you can have multiple rollups. Now, there's a lot of folks that say, hey, what happens to level addressing? Level addressing kind of goes away, but it's super helpful that you can take any subset of your accounting units or any of your other dimensions and any series of rollups, and once you build them, again, they're available to the entire organization. So if you're taking a bunch of data out of your system and putting it into Hyperion so that you can roll it up in other ways that your operation needs, you might be able to get rid of Hyperion altogether. I mean, I'm talking cost savings of software, support, upgrades, interfacing.
And being able to turn these reports around a lot faster.
Letting people do them themselves, right? So the reporting capabilities also extend themselves to more of a self-service.
Yeah.
The ad hoc reporting is going to be a lot simpler. So that's something you can catalog. Now, it depends. Some organizations, maybe they're very happy with their GL and all the lost and delivered reports give them everything they need, and so maybe there's not the opportunity there. But I would say a lot of customers right now spend a lot of time processing and manipulating data, and they'll have the opportunity to eliminate that time. So another thing that surprises us sometimes, I've had the chance to meet some CHROs, and in Lawson you're constricted to the levels you can have an organization. And even RPI, which is a small company, has multiple levels of depth throughout the organization because that is real life, right? And in version 11, you have the opportunity to create an HR organizational structure that reflects your actual organizational structure. Now, this has a lot of downstream benefits for your organization. I can't tell you how many times Stout, myself, and some of the other RPIers have helped companies build out invoice approvals, requisition approvals, and Stout's first question is always, can we leverage your HR structure? And the answer is,
no, we don't use our actual HR reporting structure for fiscal approvals.
Right, and so what is the implication is that in a separate system, we're going to maintain an approval structure,
right.
Sometimes multiple. And when somebody changes position, when somebody gets hired, when somebody leaves, we're going to update Lawson, we're going to update some other systems. They might get out of sync or out of whack. Those approvals might sit out there, right? If you have an actual true organizational structure, then you can leverage it for all your approvals. And on top of that, it's flexible to have multiple roll-ups again, and so you can have different supervisory structures, different organizational structures, different approval structures, and basically you're going to have a single source of truth for all these things. So you only have to make one update. So anyway, there's a lot of time that gets invested in this. You can look at, can I eliminate some of these third-party systems?
Yeah.
Can I eliminate the effort to maintain these? And obviously that's direct cost savings.
Yeah, this is driving all these talent management features that we have, things like performance appraisals and whatnot that, again, like those structures get mirrored out in other point systems.
So there's additional flexibility. Sometimes you have to bastardize the system and say, okay, the CEO doesn't report to someone, but I need to be able to route stuff. So somehow I put a fake reporting. Version 11 is flexible enough that you can say, yes, he doesn't report to anyone, but this person is going to approve whatever pieces I have, right? So it doesn't have to be as rigid. A lot of benefits there. Another big one is, Lawson is a transactional system, right? It's designed to take an invoice and process it for payment. And to process an invoice, you need to know the vendor, who I'm paying, and you actually need to know where you're expensing it to on the general ledger, right? And so that makes sense from a purely transactional standpoint. But if I receive a paper invoice from a vendor, I don't know that it's okay to pay. I don't know what the GL coding is. So most customers have spent time building these processes external to the system, right? With version 11, all of this comes delivered. You can leverage your HR infrastructure to know what the appropriate routing of approvals is, and you can have a single place to hold all invoicing information. So when you say, hey, I have all these expense invoices that are not in my system and I want to accrue for it, so now I'm querying my imaging or third-party database to see who they might belong to and get some amounts, you have that all in Lawson, right? So this is a big opportunity. It is also an opportunity to, once again, eliminate additional systems. Eliminate the cost with them, eliminate the integration costs, eliminate the upgrade costs.
Yeah.
Again, those are hard costs.
Document management's basically commoditized at this point. I mean, Infor is basically giving away a basic document management system as part of CloudSuite.
Yes. Out of the box. Open enrollment is what I'm really excited about. Let's face it, open enrollment in Lawson, it's clunky, right? There are some folks that use it, but most that do have it heavily customized, right? To improve that user experience. Those are customizations that have to be maintained. You pay consultants to update, you migrate them, you test them every time. Many others have outsourced open enrollment completely, sometimes to the tune of several $100,000 a year, right? In version 11, you have a complete modern open enrollment experience, right? And first of all, it's a great end user experience. It's very easy to build out and design. Functional consultant can make dependencies work. So if you select a health insurance with an HSA, that HSA appears. If you have dependents, then the options with dependents appear. If you don't, they disappear. All that comes out of the box. You can work on your open enrollment, and you don't have to complete it. In Lawson, you have to finish it. Right? Here you can leave it in draft. Go talk to your spouse or significant other. Maybe there's some things you want to review. All that stuff's in here. And from a management perspective, the dashboard stuff is off the charts, right? You can say, oh, there's 150 people that have opened this but haven't finished. I want to communicate to those 150 people that, hey, this is, you haven't finished this, just a reminder, and it'll do that automatically for you. So there's potentially a lot of cost savings in here, and a reduction in time spent by your HR organization through that open enrollment process.
And just like a shout out to our earlier presentation with Todd on mobility, with CloudSuite HCM and multi-tenant, all the stuff is available, on your staff's tablet at home with no additional infrastructure set up.
And the employee, what used to be employee self-service, manager self-service, now it's called employee and manager space, is significantly improved in terms of the user interface and the interaction and engagement that you can derive from
and all
resources.
the stuff you can do without writing a ton of custom JavaScript.
That's right. All the stuff you can do without writing a ton of JavaScript. And I think it's important to look at, like we know today, that you're not going to consolidate every single business application in your organization into a single platform. But there's a balance. I feel like we've trended in a direction where there's, 100 point solutions in an organization, and Infor can help you bring a good portion of those in, right? These are very sophisticated, mature solutions that, if you think about it, if you can have with a delivered integrated product, you eliminate interface points, upgrade cycles, points of failure, support costs. Again, direct, hard savings. And one final one to keep in mind is there's a lot of delivered approvals and action requests. So a lot of you out there probably have implemented invoice approvals because you needed to, right? And many have implemented requisition approvals, but journal entry approvals, very few people have implemented, right?
What about new AP vendor requests?
Very few people have done.
Right.
They come out of the box here, right?
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity to automate these processes without having to build out some IPA flow, maintain some IPA flow. And what's great about these things is these are things that customers themselves can start rolling out over time once they move to V11. again, an opportunity for cost savings there. So just as far as making the business case, there's direct cost savings, right? Identify the reduced infrastructure cost, right? And that could come from point solutions. That could come from migrating to the cloud, right? We're talking about hardware, installations, upgrades, interfaces. You reduce the time and internal resources dedicated to system upkeep for both Lawson and those additional solutions, right? So your organization can be more about whatever your core business is and what makes you competitive and what that value adds is, instead of just trying to keep the lights on all these different systems. And obviously there's an opportunity. I mean, this is not just the dedicated reporting folks. This is everyone in your finance, supply chain, IT, or HR departments that spends a lot of time reporting on data or building out reports. And also, there's some competitive advantages that can come from having a modern, state-of-the-art solution that can carry you for the next 20 years. All right, let's talk a little bit about the second part of this, which is project scoping.
You ready to talk turkey?
Turkey.
We're going to get down to the brass tacks here. All right, so every client's migration situation is going to be unique, right? There's a lot of options when it comes to how close does your project trend to more of a straight line upgrade versus, you know, what different areas do you want to spend some time transforming and changing and really like getting off on the right foot for the next 20, 25 years, right? So let's talk through some of the different scenarios that might sway you one way or the other. An organization that maybe recently implemented Lawson and just went through a whole design phase, an organization that has a pretty well-tuned system in terms of meeting business needs, aligned to business processes, an organization that hasn't been through rapid growth or mergers or anything since that design was put in place, that's more of like a conversion type project, right? That says, hey, let's take advantage of everything that we know to be working well in Lawson and move that up to CloudSuite without without spending a ton of time and effort rethinking it. On the other hand, we have clients that implemented Lawson in the early 2000s. Some were
late 90s
as a single hospital, and are currently a health network with like a dozen hospitals and physician group,
all patched
and,
on,
acute care center, and have gone through a lot of organizational change, a lot of mergers, have had to like rapidly onboard acquisitions without really being able to merge them in, which might lead to multiple vendor masters or multiple item masters.
Yes.
Yeah, stuff that's clearly not
bad. Yeah, Stuff that's bad.
Which means this project gives you the opportunity to go back and redo some of that stuff and get everybody on the same page. So those types of projects are going to trend more transformative in nature for sure. How are we going to get a handle on what the cost is, and what are the different elements that make up the cost? Well, one way we can do that is cataloging all of our what we'd call like RICE components, right? All of the customer created elements that connect up or go into our Lawson system. Now, I want to point out that it's super valuable to have a list of all of this stuff, but our approach to actually performing a CloudSuite implementation is not typically to let's take the list and then for each item figure out how to re-implement that in the new system. Rather, we're going to start with how can we build out a design that meets the majority of these needs using out-of-the-box functionality. So our catalog here of integration and extensions becomes more of like a checklist of where are the gaps that we might need to meet, and some of those some of those we might, at this point, might be a little unclear of, hey, does CloudSuite have this or not? But other of these things, I think you'll know right away, like, oh, we have a very specific regulatory report we need to do that, Infor doesn't offer out of the box. So we already know we're going to need to, develop that.
I have a question for you, Richard. So my organization's pretty sophisticated. They use Smart Office, and they've developed a lot of Smart Office widgets along the way. What happens to all those when I go to version 11?
Right. So, I think what you want to do is look at, why did we go through that effort to develop these widgets? What were we missing with Lawson that we wanted to go and enhance and build upon Lawson over time to have a more mature offering? Well, the root there is, hey, Lawson's out-of-the-box user interface was Portal, and it's not terribly efficient.
It's not HTML5
for a heads-down Lawson user. Think about an accountant who spends a lot of their day in Excel and maybe took advantage of all that great Excel connectivity with Smart Office, or maybe some workers that wanted to combine functionality from different Lawson screens and put it all in one place. To be more efficient. Yeah, when you're implementing a new system, it can feel like taking a step back sometimes because you are going back to sort of like that bare, what does the system come with out of the box? But on the other hand, it's a great long-term proposition.
It is.
Because it means you're more closely aligning your use of the system with what comes delivered from Infor. You can reduce the number of customizations you need to maintain. And a lot of that widget stuff that we did in Smart Office, that's available native within the web interface now.
So I'm going to try an analogy here. Yeah, you tricked out your car, but it's a car from 1995, and that baseline 2019, it's going to run better. You know, it's just the way it is.
Yeah. So another big factor when it comes to the amount of effort that goes into the project is data conversion, right? Now, what this gets to is how much data do we want to bring forward from Lawson or other, non-Lawson sources to bring into CloudSuite? And so, you might be left asking, well, what do you mean? Don't we just bring all the data? Well, it matters because there's probably some level of transformation that is going to happen here. On the HR side, you probably changed up your HR organizational structure, your supervisor structure, positions, jobs. On the GL side, activities come into the core GL. Sub-accounts work in a slightly different way.
No attributes.
There's attributes go away altogether. You need to be brought in as dimensions or user-defined fields. So think about every transaction that we want to bring forward in the system, we need to apply that mapping to, or apply that transformation to. And some of the older transactions, when you think about older personnel actions, might reference a position that doesn't even exist anymore. So we would need to map that old transaction to what we'd call a legacy position or conversion position anyway. So anyway, what you want to do is sort of make a list of all the different data elements that are important to you to bring forward, and figure out what can I live
really
with?
needed.
Yeah, what do I need in terms of history, and how much of that needs to be in CloudSuite versus how much can I leave untouched? Because just because you're not going to migrate it into CloudSuite doesn't mean you have to throw it out. There's archive solutions. Even right within CloudSuite, we have the capacity to hold sort of untransformed historical legacy data, or you might bring that into a data warehouse or other kinds of solutions that you might have.
And this is a great opportunity to mention that probably some questions out there as it relates to Infor's data migration tools. So Infor's data migration tools are good if you're only doing a GL restructure, right? Because you build out what's called the finance enterprise group. So basically that's where your entire GL sits. So it's going to be your companies and your accounts and your various dimensions and the relations and your calendars. and you do the mapping, and then everything else works like an upgrade program. So it'll build your IC companies and your PAR locations and so forth. But if you have a situation where you are, consolidating multiple item masters or consolidating multiple vendor masters or going from a one to many companies, then that's a little bit more transformation than it's designed to handle. So it depends. If all you're doing is GL rework, then it's a good opportunity to use them. If you're doing more transformation than that, then you probably just want to evaluate cost benefit. And again, there's multiple ways to store that historical data. We're definitely not saying lose it at all.
Right.
We're simply saying, what is the cost to transform it versus the value of knowing that, hey, that GL code block from 15 years ago on a PO line has been transformed to how I'm reporting on now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Infor isn't leaving the customer base hanging. They are providing, migration tooling on the finance side as on the HCM side as well. And that's an evolving product that keeps getting better. So, it really depends on, the timing of your implementation and the transformation requirements that you have, and do those align with the capabilities of that tool, and whether or not, that fits in your project.
Reporting strategy.
Oh, it's me too?
Yeah, I can step in whenever you want. So.
Yeah, so just like your interfaces and your extension to your customizations, you want to keep a list of all the reports that you have, because we assume that you'll have those data needs on the other side. But like your those other pieces of your RICE components, what we don't do is take a list of 200 or 500 or 1,000 reports and then map out each and every one and say, how are we going to redevelop? Hey, does a CloudSuite implementation involve 9,000 hours of Crystal report development? No, of course not, right? So the vast,
some of them might, I don't know.
The vast majority of reports that are out there in the Lawson space today are basically grab this set of records from this table and show it to me. And great news, that's just like a core feature of the application now.
Right.
So you don't need to actually create a report for it.
Yeah, just to dovetail a little bit into that, right? So every single form that you interact with comes in a list view. So think of a spreadsheet with filters on top. And you can edit the columns, say you're looking at your HR employee records and you always want to see hire date, put hire date. And it'll always be there. And there's a button that just puts it out in Excel. So there's a lot of reporting that the users are just going to be able to do for themselves based on the security they have. Right. That's just straight from the form.
So that's the easy stuff. But then, we get to some of the harder reports, right? So we've got maybe very specific like regulatory reporting requirements that we have that bring in like certain data elements. Or we've got, more analysis or operational focus reports, and, our core financial reporting. So this is not an afterthought when it comes to your CloudSuite design. In fact, it's one of the most important factors in the actual structural design of your solution, because the idea here is you want the out-of-the-box reporting to work for you. And the way to do that is to make sure you're tracking and recording the data that you want to report on right within those core structures. So you're basically your lead design team needs to be aware of what these reporting requirements are. It's not something they want to find out about after they've built out GL dimensions or an HR structure.
Quick shout out: RPI offers a GL sandbox exercise to help you build that future state and play with it in one of our sandboxes. And my colleague Chris Gordon and I are going to be talking about that on the same bat channel at 2:00 tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. So another factor that comes into what's the overall effort going to be of this project is which modules are we going to implement in which phase, right? I mean, if you're running all 3 Lawson suites today, it's pretty unlikely you're going to do like a one, big bang style go
we
live
recommend against
with finance, supply, and as well as HR and payroll all at the same moment, along with talent management, talent acquisition. So generally there'll be some project phasing here. And you want to figure out what, generally some guidelines of what that's going to look like for you, because that'll definitely help with getting a handle on what the effort is going to be, especially for phase 1, but also budgeting for future phases here. And then another factor when it comes to how what's this migration going to cost? Is, well, what do I have to bring to the table, right? So what does my team look like, and how can we contribute to this project? Do I have developers that are skilled in version 11 technologies, or can get trained up to do development on the Infor OS platform? Do I have project management or change management skills that could be a part of this project? Do I have trainers that can create end user guides and create training videos? Do I have BAs that can participate in the projects? And you also want to take a look at who are going to be the key pillars on your project team. What are their day-to-day tasks now, and how are you going to get those day-to-day tasks accomplished when you've got people spending maybe half their time working on a project rather than operational activities. All right, and then a final factor and cost I want to point out is the most obvious one is what's the license cost? Well, you need to talk to your Infor account executive to get a quote on Infor CloudSuite licensing.
And if by any chance you don't know who that is, email questions@rpic.com and Bill Getty will track it down for you. I've seen him do it in the past.
And some of the things that the AE can do for you is help make that case of like moving to the cloud versus on-prem. What's like, say, a 5-year cost comparison for maintaining an on-premise system. And one of the great things about CloudSuite is that they super simplified the licensing, and that you get, your core licensing gets you access to a lot broader application scope. But there are still some choices to be made. So it's important to understand what those are and figure out what you need in terms of your licensing bundle.
Absolutely. So, so again, we think this is a worthwhile endeavor for anyone out there, and certainly we have seen organizations take on a lot of this themselves, go through business process lists and identify with their process owners what the level of change hardiness is for each one. Am I happy with what I have? Do I totally want to throw it away, revamp for best practice, go through conversions, all those things? Obviously, we're in a position where we can help, and we do have a pre-planning offering. I would say there's two main things that we can bring a lot of value to the table in this type of exercise. One is we bring educated SMEs, right? So when you're looking at identifying the pain points that you have on, say, your HR onboarding process and how they might be resolved in version 11, it helps to have consultants that are familiar with version 11 and able to talk about that. I'll say the second thing is sometimes hiring consultants and having them come on site becomes a galvanizing event. So, if I have experts that are coming to meet with me and talk about my problems and how they might be able to solve them, I'm going to spend the time and take the time to go meet with them. And obviously, we're on the hook to provide documentation that you can use going forward for part of your plan, for selecting services, and very importantly for communicating to your executives the opportunity in this project.